Hello, I have another walkthrough from a journal that I've made. This is Angela from Warped Weft. So this journal is another one that I've made from the cover from Bookboard. The cover measures 9 inches, so that's 22.5, just over 22.5 centimeters, almost 23 centimeters. And the width of this is 6 3/4 inches, which is just about 17 centimeters wide. The spine is just over 2 1/4 inches. It's at 6 centimeters wide. So as I said, she's made from bookboard. The spine is reinforced with sports tape, heavy duty sports tape along the edges so that it will not come apart, as you would know if you've ever tried to take sports tape off anything. And then she's covered with cardboard digital prints. This digital print is from Pixabay, and I've added some rayon in Venice lace along the edge here, and some mulberry paper roses that are mounted onto some coffee dyed muslin. Now her closure is just a strip of scrap fabric, cotton fabric, which I have done a rolled hem along the edges of so that it won't fray. And she just does it up into a little bow. Now the reason that I do my closures this way is because if you close a book like this, no matter how thick the book board is, if it's too tight, the cover will bow. So with these you can tie them up and judge them to the exact tightness that you need. If you're going to add additional pieces to this, to a journal like this, and it makes it into a wider gaiter mouth, you can expand the closure. So on the inside cover, this whole book, by the way, but when I finished doing the constructing the cover, I then covered it in with fabric. So the whole of the front cover has been covered in fabric before I put these beautiful papers on the front, back and the spine. So on the inside cover you can see that it's got the fabric there. It's just got a little bit of paint on it to stain it to bring out the colors of the actual pages. It's got a hidden spine that the signatures are sewn into, and then the spine is joined to the book itself. This image comes from Pixabay. This is not the original color. I have in fact played around with the color on this one to get it to work with the rest of the journal. This is a digital print, and as with all of my journals, well, I don't make journals with the sole aim of selling them. If you particularly like this journal and you'd like to own her, please contact me at the links below. And in the interest of keeping this video short, if I've used a digital page or element created by someone else, as I have here, the acknowledgements are on the screen and in the box below. If I haven't credited an image, it's either because it's my own image or it's an image I've created using vintage ephemera, or it's a and then I've digitally printed it out. This is digitally printed, and this is not one of my images. The links are below. This other side is one of my papers, and that's just a postcard image, a vintage postcard image, and I've continued the color into the papers. This I used a doily, and then I cut it into quarters and folded it over so that it actually fit onto this page as a background. I've used a heart that's cut out of paper that I made from a vintage image. This is a serviette that I have decoupaged on, and then I've just made this. This is actually 3 hearts, one there, and then this sits over the inside of each of those hearts. So it makes like a little tuck, and then I've just made a little tag that tucks in there. You could tuck anything else in there that you would like. On this page I've done a triple pocket. I'll just take the cards out. Again, I've used a vintage image, a scrap of really lovely paper. This was all that was left, and I've just used that to layer with. This was the last piece I had of this leather look paper. Again, I've used to layer with some coffee dyed muslin, and then some little flower punched flowers that I've turned into a bigger flower there. This is paper that I made. I played around with the color of this. It's a little bit dark, but you can put something inside that. That sits in the back pocket up here. Then there's another little journal card that I've made from papers I've done myself. That's a vintage image I've used there. And then there's just a piece of coffee dyed paper there. It does unfold, and it's got a double-sided hidden paper clip there, and this little piece of, looks like ribbon. It's not, it's vintage cotton seam binding. It's more than 50 years old, that cotton seam binding. This is a coffee dyed paper. This is another digital image. It's from an old postcard that I created. I created this image myself. I've layered it again. There's a little bit of a round doily there. There is a fussy cut butterfly there, some coffee dyed muslin there, and just a little die cut flower with a pearl heart. Inside, this is an Artie May's tag. It's one of her freebies. This was an image from Pixabay that I've used. And then there's a doily here, vintage advertising that I've printed out there. And then I've made a little card. Again, it's from a vintage postcard image that I cleaned and printed out. This is some hand-dyed paper. This is another paper that I've made. That's a vintage postcard image that I've used to create this paper. This was a Pixabay image that I've used here. I have used it and recolored it on another journal, and it's actually the cover of the other journal. I've put a belly band on here with some trim. It's quite heavy trim that's used on upholstery, so it is quite thick and heavy. And then there's some onion skin dyed paper here. Yes, it is onion skin. Tell the difference. The onion skin has a little bit of gold in it. So the onion skin paper had gold in it. The rosemary paper had silver in it. And that's how I tell the difference between the two. I've got here a fold down envelope made from coffee dyed paper. Again, that's another image from a vintage image, vintage postcard. It's got a little fold out. This was from a book of card stock, and the image behind it was from the same package, I think. There is some of the, this has got a little touch of silver in it. So this was rosemary dyed paper. This is a vintage image. It is a tuck, and the little vintage advertising that I've printed out and put some a generic image on the back. I then used the rest of that paper from here on this side and made a pocket. In the pocket is some paper with just some little stickers on it, and that is edged with embroidered organza lace. One of my images here, the image that I created here, and I made it into an envelope, and it's got a little piece of paper inside. Oh, it's actually a little booklet that I made in there. Slides back into the envelope. And this paper is light enough to write on. A vintage postcard mounted onto an interesting little piece of paper, just some pearls and other decoration there. this is a little booklet that I made. I thought there was more. Made out of a heavier weight paper that was coloured on one side. I added an image to it, but there's plenty of writing room on that page. Just sits behind here as the tuck. And then this page is another one of the same set that I developed using a vintage postcard. And this is the other side of the doily. I've got a pocket on this side. This is a boiled book page, and I've used a vintage image to make a journal card that just sits in the pocket. This does do up into a bow. This is some coffee dyed vintage seam binding, cotton seam binding. This opens out, it can be written on, and then this just ties back up into a bow. And I will sort out the edges of the bow. This cotton, although it looks rather crumpled, once it's been inside the book, it flattens out and actually looks quite nice. It takes out all the wrinkles in it, which is quite interesting. There we go. Coffee dyed paper, which I've layered and then put another of that same image on it. These are vintage images that I have created some cards and printed them out. Coffee dyed paper with a fussy cut butterfly, with a fussy cut, well actually it's a punched heart there that I've inked around. This is a vintage image. It is a pocket, and I've created a fold out envelope with some scraps cut into an oval there for a closure, and then there's a pocket on the front, and there is a tag that matches the front cover of this book that sits in there. This is a vintage image as well, and that just sits in there. A pocket, a Pixabay image that I've used, old vintage advertising. This is a belly band so that you can tuck something in there. That's a little extra piece from Astrid. Links below. And again, it's another fold out writing paper envelope. And then that is edged with broderie anglais lace. This is a vintage image. It's from a book, The Language of Flowers, and I think there's been some more recent editions of this, but this was one of the original editions. And this is out of print, this particular book, and it's in the public domain. So it makes a lovely cover for this little booklet that I created with a little grunge background, and then there's quite a bit of coffee dyed paper inside. It is tied with a ribbon. If you wanted to add more paper, you could. And then that just sits there in the corner. That's a little scrap of paper that I designed. And this is a vintage, this is an image from Pixabay. I've played around with the colour on that one. On here, this is a digital image. The links are below. Again, this is a digital image here. The backing paper is also a digital image. That's from Astrid. I'll put the links to this, and this is also one of Astrid's. They are below. This is not Astrid's. I think this might be a Janie B one, but I will put the images down below. Again, another of Astrid's images. I've altered the colours a little bit, and it's mounted onto coffee dyed cardboard. Another of Astrid's images. This is a pocket that is made from a boiled book, and this is embroidered organza ribbon. There's just a plain tag here. This tag is made from handmade paper. I didn't make it. I bought this paper. This is Auntie May's, and I've a freebie, and I've put a generic image on the back, so that is a nice little tag to sit in there as well. onion skin dyed paper on a round doily, and then as you can see I cut out a scalloped round circle so that it actually does 2 pages. This is the vintage seam binding. This is a vintage image, and I've created another fold out envelope, and it just does up behind the image and it tucks into the tuck spot. On the other side I've got some scraps of paper. Was originally a digital print from Astrid. My apologies, my phone died in the middle of this flip through. So carrying on, this is a piece of boiled book paper. This pale pink comes from the roses in my garden. The roses are actually deep red. They're very large, cabbage type roses, very, very dark red, but unfortunately they don't last very long, and particularly when it rains, they go manky very quickly. So once they start to go a little bit horrible, I take them, I use them in my boiled book pages, and then the vegetation is returned back to the garden under the rose bush for compost. This is a coffee dyed paper with a little punch in the corner. I've just done a little bit of stenciling there. This is another page from a Pixabay. This is more of that paper that came in various different colors. The background is a digital paper. I can't remember exactly where I got it from. I will put the link in the box below. And this paper was in the same pack as this one, and I've created a journaling card, and this paper was also in the same pack as this, and this is an index card that I have adhered to. The other side of the paper envelope, and here I have a vintage image that I have used to create a card. Excuse me. This is more of the coffee dyed seam binding with some coffee dyed muslin behind it, and that just slides in there, and there is a double-sided hidden paper clip here. This is also the other side of a paper bag. So in the paper bag I have a little fold-out booklet and a journal card that is made from an index card. This paper again was another one that was in that pack. The colors came, they were basically the same pages, same few pages repeated in various different colors. So there was pink, there was green, there was kind of like an aqua color, there was this blue, and I think there was a darker blue. Here I've used another page from Pixabay. This is actually a double flip out, and you can see here on this side I have used, I'm not sure if you can see that, I'll move this across a bit, excuse me, that is another generic print that I've put on the back, pale enough to be able to be written on, and the whole thing just folds up and it's held together with the double-sided paper clip. Coffee dyed paper, the other side of the doily, and the center of the signature is an envelope, and this envelope is another one of Astrid McLean's, and inside there is a little tag from Astrid and a couple of little pages. This paper was raspberry dyed with raspberries. I know it's blue, and I expected it to pink. It wasn't, it turned out blue. The other side of the doily, the coffee dyed paper, the other side of the paper bag, the double tuck here. It's made out of a book page, an old book page, and I've put 2 little scrap pieces of paper from, it's the same as this print on the back, it's just I haven't played with the color on this. This is the color, how it comes, and then there's some little tags there. That's onion skin paper. I've just put a little die cut on that one. It's another one of Astrid's little pieces. This is made out of just some some scraps that I glued on a card. And then there's a little heart there. Inside, there's a bag, a book made of rosemary dyed paper, and this is just a little filled with coffee dyed paper. On this side, I've made another tag here, another tuck here, that is a fold out. This was one-sided paper, again that matched the same set as this, and because it's one side, it's single-sided, the other side is great for writing on. And then there's the embroidered organza lace there, and then I've just put in some I think this is a score, an old score. Excuse me, I've got a tickle in my throat. And this is a vintage advertising that I've printed out, and it's got generic prints on the back. Made a pocket here. This is like a cotton zigzag lace, rickrack lace, and I've made 3 cards to go with that. 2 of them were all 3 were from index cards, and I've just adhered the paper onto the front of those. The other side of the paper, again from Pixabay, this is the stenciled paper, this is plain coffee dyed paper. This came from somebody's kit, and again I'll need to put the acknowledgement in the box below, and it does open out, and then it's got a piece of paper in there to write in. Another of Astrid's little postage stamp sized pieces here. This is also Astrid's. This opens out, it's a gatefold. It's got some paper in there which you can actually take out, and then it just slips back in behind the belly band there. Behind it is a pocket, and I have a vintage card made with a vintage postcard. It's digitally printed by me, and it's got generic background on the back. That again is the end of the signature. So that is Astrid McLean's paper, and this is the other side of it. This is her faded florals, I think, but I'll put that in the box down below. This paper came from Pixabay. This is from Artie Mays. These were some sayings that she had, and I just put that on the front. As I said, I can't remember whose paper this was, but there'll be an acknowledgement in the box. Again, Astrid McLean's, and this has been printed out. This is a generic background and some more of the raspberry dyed paper, and it's held in place with a gold cord. This, I think, was somebody's paper. I will have to put the acknowledgement in the box down below. This is a paper I created. This is a vintage postcard image. This is part of a serviette that I have decoupaged onto some coffee dyed paper, and another one of Artie May's sayings. Again, another of a coffee dyed paper. This is stenciled on from scrap nuts, I think they're called. The acknowledgement will be in the box down below. More onion skin dyed paper. I think, is this a start? No, this isn't. This is part of the last signature. So this is beautiful. It's got a lovely feel to it, and a lovely look to it in real life. This page is made, the base is coffee dyed paper. So this is Artie Mays. That was the same freebie. I've made another of these origami envelopes, and it does have some coffee dyed paper in the envelope. It's got a die cut, some punched flowers, some doily here, page from an old book. This I designed myself. So this is machine embroidered. So it's embroidered on water-soluble fabric, and then you wash the water-soluble fabric away and you're left with lace. This is made of rayon, and I designed that myself. And this is some coffee-dyed muslin underneath it. There's a greaseproof paper bag, and in there is an image. This is a vintage image that I've adhered onto some interesting, rather textured cardboard, and then I've just put some plain paper on the back so that it's a little bit easier to write on, and that just slides into the paper bag here, greaseproof paper bag. On this side, this was from that same pad of paper. This is from a book called The Language of Flowers. It's out of print, and obviously it's public domain, and so I just used this section of it because it went with these images of roses here, and then it's got a bit of a grunge design on the back, but light enough to write on. This is another vintage book, Floral Poetry and the Language of Flowers. I've made this smaller. Again, this is the one that's out of print these days, and I have just used that cover image. And I've adhered some tinted copy paper to the back, not copy paper to the back. That sits in the pocket there. There's this little, I think this is a Sizzix die that I used there. It's a piece of leftover paper from that same pack. A little bit of this beautiful embossed paper that I loved so much, and a little piece of, I love the color of this. This is pearlized paper. And it's mounted onto fairly thick parchment paper. This again is another one of my designs that I did from a vintage postcard, and obviously it's got some underlays on it, and there's this piece of coffee dyed paper in that. And I think my book is creeping up. I need to bring it back into view. So this is embossed paper here. It came embossed, and because it's double-sided embossed, as you can see here, you've either got to put a piece of paper on the back or do what I did, and I glued two together down the long edge and created a pocket. And in the pocket there are some pieces of these are old advertisements. This one's been adhered to some coffee dyed cardboard, and I've just printed them out digitally. This is that same paper that belongs here, the original colour, or the colour how it prints out on my printer. It might not print out exactly the same colour on yours. I've got a tag here that has a little paper clip on it. Decorated paper clip can hold another tag. This is just a piece of parchment paper with a stamp on it. That's a Kaisercraft stamp. And then just some leftover papers, and I've trimmed it with some stickers. This also flips out so it can be written inside as well. Again, that same cutout, that's the Sizzix one. This was from this piece of paper. It's actually not paper, it's card. It's from a box of perfumed sticks. The box was so nice I wanted to reuse it. This has got a little bit of embossed paper. Is it embossed? No, it's not, it's just printed. Looks like it's embossed. And I've just glued it to some card, and then I've put some coffee dyed paper on the back. But this is actually a flip out. It's 2 envelopes. So this here is the advertising part of this box, and it was just really nice. So here we go. It's Morgan & Finch Lumiere Fragrance Diffuser, and it's jasmine and rose. But it just looked really nice, looked really elegant. So I've put it onto the envelope here. I've added a card in here. I've lined the envelopes with vintage, or not vintage, old book paper. This is the other envelope. So there was a cream colored envelope and a gold envelope. So I've lined the inside of the gold envelope with the last little bit of that red paper, put some coffee dyed paper in it, some music paper on there, and it just folds up. So you can fold it that way and that way, or you could fold it that way and put that over the top I prefer it like that, but other people may have other ideas. A bit of extra paper there. Coffee dyed paper. This one is onion skin dyed paper. I've just made a little, used a larger doily and a scallop circle. It goes over both sides of the page, and I've used it as a tuck. And just for good measure, there is a decorated paper clip here with some of the vintage seam binding. And then I've made a card which I have stenciled on the back of, and this is a vintage image here. This is the other side of both the doily and the paper clip, and I have a little piece of paper here. This is actually part of this paper here, and it was a leftover piece, and I've got some coffee dyed paper there as well. Another of my papers that I've created from vintage postcards. As I said, I need to find out whose paper this was. An acknowledgement will be in the bottom. There's the last of this beautiful pinky, peachy coloured paper. There's a little bit of dyed, boiled paper, and then I've got a matching cutout here with some coffee dyed muslin there, and a couple of little tags. This is the onion skin dye. It just sits in the little tuck there, and then there's the vintage image on that there, and then this is the last page. Again, I need to put that acknowledgement in the box down below. And the other side, this paper again came from Pixabay, as did this. So this is the butterfly journal, and as I said, it just does up loosely with this fabric wrap. And you just tuck the wraps over and under, or you can tie it in a bow.